So this is our first wrestler on the show. Happy to bring on my friend Jenna Burkert onto the Athletes to Athletes podcast. And today, as I was telling you, Jenna, you have a different story. Female athletes and female wrestlers in general have a different story. You don't have the traditional growing up in feeder program type of thing with other female athletes. You're competing against the boys from a very early age, right? But before we even jump into career things, Jenna, where are you from? Talk about the life of Jenna and how it became that you are now, Olympic wrestler, Olympic and freestyle wrestler, Jenna Burkert.
I am originally from Long Island, New York. I started wrestling in Rocky Point, New York. I also went to school in Longwood, New York. I started out as a dancer. I was an actress, a very showbiz, kid from Long Island whose mother had aspirations to be an actress. And that made me want to be an actress. So, it's kind of funny how I started in that world. And then there was just a flyer going around in school and about wrestling. And so I just grabbed it, and I'll never forget it. This kid ripped the flyer out of my hand. It was like, Jenna, you can't do that. You're a girl. And that was like, poof, the genesis of Jenna Burkert, right? And just, proving people wrong and really, sticking it to the man. That really just spitfired everything. But I definitely grew up, I would say, maybe a little bit differently because my brother's 5 years older than me and he's autistic. And so I grew up in a different kind of world where maybe being odd was just different, I had a very different family dynamic, because when my brother 34 years ago, being autistic was just not as talked about. It wasn't as well known. So we were like the family on the block that kids kind of looked at my brother, like he was weird. And I grew up in an environment that like nobody was going to talk to the family like that. And like we're typical New Yorkers. And so you always defended the honor. And so I attribute a lot of the person I am today through that path, always, having my brother's back. My mom was actually like blind in her eye from an accident when she was 6 years old. So like, when you think about it now, that's like no big deal. Disabilities and just little things like that don't seem like a big deal. But at the time, and kids are kids, they're going to look at it like it's odd. And so I attribute a lot of the who person I am today and to going through all that sort of stuff and just kind of having that chip on my shoulder at a young age.
Yeah. And I mean, me knowing you and seeing how you compete, you can obviously see that chip on your shoulder. And seeing how family oriented you are with taking care of your brother and, being as close as you are with your family. And I had a chance to meet your family in Vegas. I think I told you about that. It was complete chance happening. I was walking up the steps at the US Open years and years ago. And I think your mom had on like a Jenna t-shirt or something. And I was like, oh, I love Jenna. She's awesome. She's like, oh, well, I'm actually Jenna's mom, and I had a chance to like meet your entire family. So, meeting them when I did, and then, knowing you, the chip on the shoulder completely, you can see it. Right. And I'm guessing that little boy who ripped the flyer out of your hand certainly helped that chip get a little bit bigger. So what was it like when you first started wrestling as a young girl with a chip on her shoulder?
Yeah, it's funny, like how at 29 years old, I can still remember the feeling of like walking down the basement steps to Rocky Point High School's wrestling room. And we had a lot of great wrestlers come through that program. They all went on to do really good things at the D1 level. And I grew up in the time frame where Jesse Jensen and Corey Jensen were like the men of Long Island, and they did really well. And so it was a good dynamic of, great wrestlers. And, me being 6 years old, walking down into this room, I still remember that feeling of being like, whoa, like it's packed in here. It's super hot. Like these wrestling dads are crazy. Like I'm just here with my mom. Like don't know what I'm doing. I don't have any siblings that wrestle, so it was just a little bit different, but they made it fun, which I really like. I'm thankful for my career path because so much of the emphasis was on having fun at an early age, as opposed to just really intense, structured workouts. So I had a lot of fun when I started, and I couldn't wait to go live. I don't like drilling. Like I wanted to go right to live. I'm kind of still like that, honestly. I think anyone would say that I was live the whole time. And then I was just like naturally kind of good at it. And that's fun, just like the positions, like it was like I was born to wrestle. Like the positions just came natural. I had fun doing it and I wanted to be the best. I just really enjoyed competition. And I'm kind of like that in all aspects, like I'm very competitive, whether I was like in my dance stuff, like I like showbiz. I like being out there. I like to perform. And it's nice to have started like that and to kind of still enjoy that, like enjoy all the moments. But yeah, little Jenna had a ball, and then going to competitions, and it was funny because like, my dad didn't wrestle, my brother didn't wrestle, we didn't know anything, and they would actually make me go eat before weigh-ins because they wanted me to be big and strong. And we would go to like pancake house before I go weigh in. And like, cause that we had no idea. And I'll never forget it. We were at like, I don't know, I might've been like 6th grade, something like that. At a USGWA had like a national tournaments at the time. It was the only tournaments you could go to for women's wrestling. So that was the only time you'd see another girl, really. At least for where I'm from in New York, you really didn't have girl wrestling. In other parts of the countries, like Hawaii, Texas, they probably had more, but not where I was from. So it was the first time you would see all these girl wrestlers and get to wrestle those guys. And we went to like this place called like Bucks, like it was some like steakhouse. And we went there, and as we were leaving, like this other wrestler's dad, who like I was kind of close in weight with his daughter, and he was like, "Hey, what weight did Jenna weigh in at?" And my parents were like, "Oh, I don't know, we're heading there now." And they're like, "After the steakhouse? Like what?" And I always think funny, like the emphasis was just on having fun and wrestling. It wasn't about making weight, but I'm thankful for that. But funny to think about now.
Yeah, that's probably the complete opposite of a lot of wrestlers, right? Where they're not so worried about what they're eating before weigh-ins, but what they're eating after weigh-ins. And you said it was always an emphasis on fun, which is great because we've seen how the world kind of looks at women's wrestling sometimes, or at least how they used to look at it.
Yeah.
The way they look at it now, there's there's Helen, there's Adeline, there's Tamara. Like the world team is incredible, right? There's so many world medals, but at that time it was still growing. It was in its infancy.
Yeah.
What was kind of that thing that made you stick to wrestling besides the fun, knowing that like it wasn't really welcome for girls to wrestle?
Yeah, I think I just like part of me like with that chip on my shoulder, just like because at the time I was wrestling when there was no women's wrestling in the Olympics. So like I had these Olympic aspirations with really no path that was set for us. And that's interesting to me to think about now, like because that seems discouraging. Like, well, why do something if you can't go where you want to go? And I think it was just like, control what you can control, staying in the moment. I liked wrestling. That was fun. And I wanted to beat as many people up as I could, whether that took me to the Olympics or not, like I was just little by little chipping away. And then in the 6th grade, when I remember I was 12 years old and all of a sudden we're in the Olympics, and it's like, it's starting to happen. And then I think what really helped me was my coach, Darren Goldstein, set up the senior national team camp was happening in Staten Island, New York. So he hooked me up with going out there and getting to meet the Olympians and meet the national team. And that was like, just like mind blowing. I got to see the intensity, the training, and have fun with the athletes. I think that was the most eye-opening thing, was like, it's really easy to look at people like working hard and, that can be like intimidating because you're like, oh my God, like I'm 12. How am I ever going to do what these women are doing? But when you see them off the mat or like on the side and they're like picking me up and teaching me things and asking me about 6th grade problems, like you can connect with people. And I think that keeps you like in the hunt of things, like you just enjoy it. But that was just eye-opening. I was like, these girls are going to the Olympics. I met them. And then, flash to August, we are watching them in the Olympics, the very first ever. And I had just met all these women. So that really helped my momentum, kind of like just sticking with it and seeing where, because those women are the trailblazers, right? Like, I mean, they are the ones who really advocated and pushed and wrestled on men's college teams. You know, they really cleared the path for my generation. Now my generation is clearing the path so that women can, you can actually have a college to wrestle at, as opposed to just, oh, well, I'll train at, you know, this women's school that's not really well known, or, oh, I'll go to the training center. So each generation, I think, is doing their part to see the bigger picture.
Yeah. Do you remember who those girls were that you had a chance to meet that were on the Olympic team?
Oh yeah, I have all the pictures with them, which are hilarious. But my favorite was always, she didn't make the Olympic team, but you know, obviously Christy Morano at the time. She was a New Yorker, so I always loved her. Patricia Miranda was like one of my very first. I got to meet Clarissa. Marcy was a blast. Marcy Van Dusen. You know, I got to meet Sarah McMahon and Stephanie Lee and all those guys. But I will say, probably one of the biggest moments in my young career, and I think often about it now, is I met Patricia Miranda at that camp. So I'm in the 6th grade. A year later, I'm in the finals of like body bar at the time. It's like to make the cadet team, because we didn't have the world championships then. And I'm talking to her, and first of all, she comes up to me and my mom and remembers me. So that's already like a big moment in my life of like, wow, Patricia Miranda remembers me. Like, she's an Olympic bronze medalist, and I'm like wrestling at body bar. So she's like checking in with me, and then she's like, how are you doing today? And I'm like, I'm actually in the finals. And she was like, oh my God, that's awesome. And I was like, yeah, but I'm starving. I haven't eaten all day because I was so nervous. And she was like, hold on, stay right here. And the tournament was at the Olympic Training Center. So she runs up to the cafeteria, gets me like a Gatorade, a peanut butter jelly sandwich, and then runs back and brings it to me so that I could eat something before my finals match. And it wasn't a long moment, but it was just her like teaching a young athlete, like, hey, like, you need nutrition to perform. Not only do you need it, but I'll go get it for you. Like, very selfless, and like teaching you the importance of why. And just like that dynamic really made me like the senior level wrestler I think I am, because I try to give back as much as possible, whether it be, you know, wrestling or just other type of conversation, because that was a huge moment in my life, you know, that really helped me, I think. So
That's pretty huge. That's huge. And you know, when you have a chance to, you know, kind of pay it forward, you know, it's always great that you do that. Now, as you're progressing and you're in the finals as a 12, 13-year old, and then you start to move on to higher and higher levels, is this when you start to kind of realize that Olympic dream as you're in the finals of tournaments, or were you continuing to wrestle and just having fun and things just started to happen? Or was it that you had a dream and you accomplished it?
yeah, I was talking about this with my wife not that long ago, actually, because I was just like, you know, my mom instilled such a beyond belief in me. And you know, it was just natural for me to just think I could do anything, because nobody was telling me I couldn't. You know, like, I just had a support system that was so encouraging. So before I ever even knew that women's wrestling was in the Olympics or not, like, I was still wrestling, but obviously I'm really young at the time. I was watching the Winter Olympics, and I remember just watching that on TV, and I was like, I'm going to be at the Olympics. Like, I have no idea what sport I'm going to be in it, but I just know I'm going to be in the Olympics. So I had that confidence. But I think, like, as I started, you know, you win these tournaments, it's, you know, it's like helpful. I think like the moment things really changed for me, like, hey, this is serious, you can really make an Olympic team, was, you know, fast forward, I'm at the Northern Michigan at the Olympic Training Center. I go from like, when I started on that team, you know, I'm 15. It's me, Helen, Adeline, Veronica Carlson, like tons of world medalists are on this team, junior worlds, you know, and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, you know, not the best in that room by any means, like, not at all. And, you know, as the year goes on, I start beating these older girls, you know, and I'm like getting better, starting to score on them. So I'm like, confidence is growing. And then I go to Sweden for like the lady clip-on tournament. I'm like 16, I think. Well, I beat a world medalist there, like a senior world medalist. I don't remember where she was from. I think Poland. And that's when I like burst onto the scene. Like all of a sudden I'm like athlete of the week for USA Wrestling, all this kind of stuff. And I have no idea who I just wrestled, like no clue until like Gary Abbott's like, like trying to get an interview. And I'm like, oh shit, like that was a big deal, And so that's when I really start to realize like, wow, like I think I could actually, do something. Cause I'm like, I'm really getting better, like at a very fast pace. So that was like where I was like, wow, I can really start like making a name for myself on the senior level.
Mm-hmm. So what's training like for you? Obviously it's a little bit different because you said you don't see girls, until there's like a tournament somewhere that you have to obviously travel for. So what's that training like, and how do you balance training and school as a young athlete?
Yeah, it's a task for sure. At this point, I'm at Northern Michigan. My daily life is like practice was at 5 a.m. So you wake up at 4 something in the morning. It's in Northern Michigan. It's freezing cold. You gotta I didn't have a car, so I have to walk my way to the dome. And just like it's like building that resiliency training in me, and we'd go through a practice, then shower and eat and rush to our local high school, stay in school all day, and then rush back for another practice. So it's humbling. I could never do that schedule now. I don't know how I served 4 years at Northern Michigan, but God loved me for that because it was brutal.
Yeah.
And like, talk about just being so exhausted and then like having to like do schoolwork and then being away from home, like make time for Skype sessions with my family. There was a lot of sacrifices, and they've paid off, but you still make a sacrifice somewhere. For me, it was losing 4 years of my family. And that, like that's hard. And at a younger age, right? Because it's not college age, because that would be normal. But of course, I go there at 15. So I lose my 3 high school years, and then I do a year of college. But luckily for me, my parents moved out to Colorado, so I got to catch up on some missed time. But yeah. It was brutal mentally and physically.
What was the decision like when you're 15 and you say, Mom, Dad, I want to leave and go to Northern Michigan to train and go to school there? I mean, it's a good ways away from New York, where you're from. So what's that conversation like, and who posed that type of opportunity to you?
So when I made the cadet team, we go to El Salvador. The coach on that trip is the assistant coach at Northern Michigan at the time, Tony Deanda. He kind of tells my mom about it, and tells me, and he's like, we would love you when you're like a senior in high school. Think about it. And I just finished my freshman year. So I'm like, senior year, that's a ways away. So I don't think anything of it after that trip. And then I get a call in the summer that one of the college girls dropped out, and they were willing to add a 5th high school spot for me. Because at the time it was Helen, Adeline, Veronica, Aaron Goldstein, and then they added the 5th spot for me. So as soon as Tony was on the phone with my mom, I'm like sitting there, like jumping up and down, like, holy shit, like, yes, this is it. You see this all the time, like gymnasts leaving home, like, you just see this sort of thing. And like my mom and I were very much so about like this dream. And then when my mom like got off the phone call, I remember like I instantly cried because I was like, wait, what does this mean? Like I have to like leave, like I'm excited on one end, and then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I gotta go. Like, and then she was like, we gotta ask your dad, which really meant like we were just like, my mom was just gonna tell my dad, because that was just like, my mom was, that was it. Like, if that's what Jenna wanted to do, then that's what we were gonna do. And so it was very hard. But I think there was just so much excitement built in, because it felt like I was really like so close to the dream, like really like, and so I was willing to make that sacrifice, as were my parents. And that's like, to lose baby girl, like that's hard, and all dynamics of it was difficult, but we made it work. I saw them every month, because I was like, they would come to my competitions, I would go home. So they really did make it work. My parents would go to all my competitions, so I would see them often. It just like, you didn't see them in the day-to-day kind of stuff, but luckily for me, technology was on my side and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was difficult.
Yeah. How did you make that transition? Because I mean, normal athletes, when they go away for school, they're going away as a 17, 18-year-old, right? I was 17 as a college freshman, so it was a little bit different for me. You're leaving with high school still left over, and I mean, you probably barely have a driver's license at this point. Like, you're just like, I'm headed to Northern Michigan. How is that transition when you get there as at such a young age?
I honestly laugh about it now because I'm like, it was so awful. Like, like I really don't know how I kind of survived it, but it's like, it was just a whole new world, like I'm from the hustle and bustle of Long Island, New York. Then you throw me in like the freezing emptiness of Northern Michigan with kids that are completely different. Like, I showed up my first day with like Jordans on that matched my like belt, that matched my shirt, like fly. And then these people there are wearing like moccasins and jeans, and it's like not a fashion show like it is in New York. And I remember like someone like talk crap to me of like, oh, you think you're cool with your shoes? Like, you're in the USOAC. And I was like, with me, I'm like, well, what did you say? Like, so just so funny to think about it now, especially because I love Northern Michigan now. Like, that's like a second home to me, but so difficult, like moving my stuff into a dorm room. Like, first of all, I didn't grow up with sisters, so I have no idea how to act like with other females. Like, I have no idea, like New Yorkers are just like sarcastic human beings. So like socialization was like funny, like those dynamics. Like, we're all from all over the country. And then like I'm in a wrestling room where I'm just getting the shit kicked out of me every day. Like, I'm like, oh my God, like I can't score a point here. And then like my coach is crazy. Like, Shannon Gillespie would even admit that. Like, he's just like an energetic guy. And I'm thinking, I'm not going to make it a month here. Like, I'm not even worried about this place because I'm going to be gone in a month. That's what I told myself. I'm like, this is ludicrous to me. And I'm like crying every day to my mom. Like, I can't do this anymore. Like, it's horrible. But as much as I would say that, like, I could never quit. Like, the idea of me being the one to leave the program, like, I would never do that. So I just like stuck it out. You just keep showing up. That's been like my mantra lately, is show the hell up. And, I kept doing that. And then you start to get a little bit better. And then you start to make some friends and you start to build those relationships. I think the lesson of it is like, you can't do anything alone. You have to lean on people a little bit. When things are hard, you have to lean on people. And I think that being vulnerable, even at a young age, like, I didn't care that I would cry in school. I'd go to the guidance counselor, but can I call my mom? Like, so I had no problem just admitting where I felt weak and calling the person who I knew was going to lift me up. So, but funny to think about now.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's tough. You're kind of thrown into the fire with girls you kind of know. I mean, obviously now you know them very well. You've all been around the world. Some of you compete against each other. I mean, you had to wrestle Helen at the Olympic trials. Like, there's just so much parity between the female team. But like, how does it feel for you to know that you were kind of part of this female Olympic wrestling movement, of it gaining steam and getting bigger and getting better? How does that feel to know that you were part of that in the early ongoing?
I mean, it's like, very prideful because I can see how far. It's really cool to see how far things have come, and to know that like my voice has played a hand in it, a small part. But I think everybody's small part collectively really added up. I think that's the importance of fighting for things that you want or that you deserve. I think, look at the times we're in. It's important to advocate for yourself, and it does make a difference. So I think like I'm proud of my generation, the ones before me and the ones after me, that are just pushing the envelope on things that we deserve, because that's the only way things are going to change. So I'm grateful to have been a part of it and to continue to witness and still advocate as much as possible.
Yeah. So let's continue down this career path. You continue winning and making teams, and but also as you continue winning, it's the opposite when it comes to making weight for you, where you keep getting smaller. And you've wrestled 60, and then I think it's 57 and 55. Like, you keep getting smaller. So the days of hitting a steakhouse before weigh-ins are certainly long gone. But how would you say you've kind of battled that transition? Because the weight cut is tough. It's not just tough physically; it's tough mentally. How would you say that it's been on you mentally, I guess, with getting smaller and really putting in more when it comes to your diet and less when it comes to technique, right? So how has that transition of continuing to lose weight as you've gotten better, how has that been for you?
It's funny because I wrestled, as heavy as 63 kilos, and it's like that's almost 10 kilos above what I'm wrestling now. Um, and I think I'm as strong as damn near anyone. I have the confidence where I'm like, whatever weight class, whatever time, like that's just like how I feel. But smaller is where I have more success. I think hindsight being 2020, I wish I would have been at a lighter weight earlier on. I wish I would have taken that like nutrition more seriously. And, I think I was comfortable at 59 and 60, but that wasn't like my peak body form. Now I'm like very physically fit and I just enjoy it, like ironically though, it's not a weight cut. That's like the weirdest thing. Like especially for this year's, Final X, as opposed to last year's world team trials, because I was going to go 57 until Helen medaled at the Olympics. And then I was like, well, damn, I got to go 55 now.
Yeah.
And I was just coming back from an injury that happened during the summer. So that weight cut was like, I really had to bust my ass for like 8 weeks. This one, I graduated my military school. And, I wasn't really that heavy. I think I was like 59, 60 kilos, but I like to walk around at about 56 kilos for 55. That's just my preference. And so I just had to gradually come down. And then by the time I rolled into Final X, I was, eating and drinking very normal. So it felt weird. I was like, I didn't put plastics on. I didn't weight cut the day of. I shot hoops the day of weigh-in. So like, I can't even believe like that's where my career is at and how much I get to enjoy it, because it used to be all about the weight cut. And now it's just like the weight cut, to me, the weight will always come off. Like I'm physically fit, my metabolism's rolling. Like I just need to put in the work and the weight will come off. Luckily for me, I have a great wife who cooks very like, very nutritional, and it's a very family affair. So I'm lucky. Like her and I eat the same things. It's not like I'm eating like baby food or anything crazy. So it's a whole dynamic, and like I enjoy just being active. We're always hiking, playing tennis, like we like to be outdoors. So for me, it's like finally in the end of my career, I'm enjoying like every step of the way. It used to be like on a Saturday I got to go weight cut or go do this or go do that, and now I don't have to do that because you got to get smarter when you're older. Like I'm not going to put plastics on or do crazy things like that. So it's funny to see where I used to be at and the crash diets and binging and all that sort of stuff. Now, when I talk to younger athletes, I'm like, it has to be a lifestyle. I heard that my whole life, but I didn't know what it meant. And it really plays a big part. It's a weight class sport. So you've got to find the weight class you're going to be successful at. And, want to get as physically fit as possible. And then at some point there is going to be a weight cut, depending on how lean you are. So you just kind of have to accept that a little bit moment of suck and it'll be all right. But yeah, it's funny to see where I've started at, where I'm at now, but how much more I enjoy it now because I'm actually not cutting weight like I used to. So it's fun.
Yeah. And it sounds like, as your career goes on, just like in life in general, you start to figure out who you are and what type of person you are, because it is a lifestyle thing. And on the mental health side of it, you really figure it out. And some people struggle with different things when it comes to weight cutting. You want to look a certain way, like the body issues go into the mental health issues. Did you have any sort of mental barriers that you had to get over as your weight class keeps coming down?
Oh, for sure. That's a great question. It's a really good question because absolutely, like I'm a very like confident human being, right? And I like who I am. I'm very, authenticity is queen is like my thing. But there are still hurdles and you're still growing and your body's changing. And, after losing my mom last year, it was hard to find my footing. You know, I dramatically lost the Olympic trials. And I wasn't really mad about that. I've actually never really given much thought of losing to Helen because, you know, I didn't have the training behind me because I had spent 40 days in the ICU. So how could I be mad at myself for having a great performance and not training? Like, did the best I could. And then, you know, the weeks leading to that world team trials, I think I like really honed in on being like psychotically fit because it was something I could control. And I couldn't control much else in my life at the time because, you know, I just lost my mom and it felt like you could never have any control over anything. And I just threw myself into workouts, like workouts, and was obsessed with getting like ridiculously fit. I mean, I was incredibly small at that trials, too small. I did the same thing for world championship. And I probably cared too much on just being like really fit. And that didn't lead to like a better performance, in my opinion. Like, I'm lucky. I beat the world champion to make the world team, and then I still get a bronze medal. But that really wasn't even the best version of myself because I think I was thinking about the wrong things because it felt like being as physically fit, having these 6-pack abs to me felt like what I could control. So I've had to deal with that, you know, like I think realizing and learning from that really helped me for this year's Final X because once my weight was down, I was like, well, what's the point of being down if like it's not like weigh-ins are happening? Like, who cares what you look like type of thing. So it really made me hone in on like, hey, you need to eat this because it's like your body's a machine, as opposed to like, oh, I just want to look aesthetically pleasing. So it's very difficult, I would say, especially for women. Like, you're getting judged all the time. Like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, the other week, someone posted my picture of myself with like my singlet straps down on like some wrestling form. And people were like accusing me of being like on steroids, like too masculine, all this stuff.
Yes.
And they're like masculine body and masculine face. And I was like, okay, you can say what you want about the body, but this don't attack my face. Like, I was just cracking up. I was like, damn, that's savage. I was like, well, you know, like it is what it is, but it's just kind of like funny that like, wow, you would never say that, in my opinion, about Thomas Gilman or Dayton Fix for being too like shredded basically, and Dayton actually tested positive. So like, and that's not a dig at him, it's just whatever, you know, whatever it is, but that's kind of messed up that you would, you know, I've had numerous tests with USADA. I get tested by the government, and quite honestly, it's an attack on my integrity, which, you know, like I pride myself on lots of integrity, you know, I'm tested all the time. So it's just like, I don't like being attacked like that. That really bothered me, especially because I pride myself on competing clean. And I know a lot of people who don't, and foreigners who don't, and that pisses me off. So, you know, it's like, it kind of sucks, you know, it's like, wow, I work out all the time. And when I'm close to weight, of course I have fucking 12% body fat. Of course I look a little bit. Like, I was like laughing. I'm like, man, like here I am a few pounds heavier. Like, I don't look that shredded as I did at Final X because like, it's just natural. Like, but it's like, it goes with everything of just like, you know, you're going to be attacked for certain things, and you just got to like shrug it off and hone in on who you are and just not really give a crap, because you're going to get attacked in all walks of life or whatever.
For sure. For sure. And outside of being an advocate for female wrestling, you're, you know, you said it, you know, you and your wife, right? Which is different in this world. When you decide to come out, what's it like for you as a female athlete that is, you know, an open lesbian and married to an awesome wife, by the way, who I love. And I told you I choose her over you any day.
Everyone says
but
that.
I love you. I love you both. I love you both. But no, like, what's it like for you? Because that's, you know, that's not something that's on the mat, right? It's not on the scoreboard. That is who you are, you know? So what's it like for you as an athlete who is, you know, openly gay?
It was intimidating, you know, because I think like growing up, like you always hear the stereotypes of like a female wrestler has got to be like super masculine, and they're they're lesbians. And I think like I didn't want to give into that stereotype of like, oh, I'm just a female wrestler and I'm a lesbian. Like, damn it, you know, they got me. They reeled me in, you know, like, so I kind of hated that almost. And, you know, it was a really difficult journey of like acceptance and all that kind of stuff. But the more that I could be myself, the better Jenna the wrestler became, because it makes sense. Like when you have your, you know, stability and all your boxes checked, like you're gonna perform better because you have all that stuff on your side, versus when you're like, you know, you don't have any of that and you feel unstable. You're not gonna probably wrestle as well. You're probably not gonna do as well in school, you know, all that kind of stuff. But it was intimidating because, you know, people like Jenna the wrestler, but did they like Jenna the person off the mat with my wife? You know, that was really hard to even say that. You know, wrestling is like a, you know, male dominated sport, very Midwest, and you know,
Not every person in the wrestling community is very accepting either.
yeah, and it was intimidating. I felt, you know, I remember people being like, "Oh, does your husband wrestle?" And like, oh, and now my wife actually works for wrestling, but no, so it was difficult.
Yeah.
But I found that the more that I just shared who I am along the way, gave people a good glimpse into my life, and either people liked me or they didn't. And, you know, hopefully they just dislike me for who I am and not who I'm married to. That I can accept.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah,
That's, I mean, and that's the awesome part about it, right? Is when you realize that you're just authentically being who you are, and how many people actually accept you for being who you are, and so many people who are like, Jenna, we were waiting for you to just be you. You
yeah,
know, it's got to be refreshing, right? So, like, how much support did you get, and how much like weight was lifted off you when people were like, Jenna, we love you for you being the wrestler as well as, you know, Alex's wife.
yeah. Oh my God. It was just like such a weight like off my shoulders. You know, like I remember like throughout my like life, you know, talking to Sarah and talking to Aaron and, you know, like coming out to my friends, and that was so hard because, you know, you're friends with these girls forever. And then all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden, like, oh, I actually, you know, like it seems like a detour as opposed to just a part of your story. And then, you know, like Sarah was a big encouragement on like, you know, fuck what anyone says and be yourself. And, you know, really
Yeah.
encourage. It never felt strange. And so that really helped me along the way. And then like coming out to my other friends, and they're like, yeah, we do not care. Like, at all. And then even like their parents did not care at all, because, you know, I pride myself, like I am friends with my friends, but I'm really friends with my friends' parents. Like I am an old soul. That's who I'd rather hang out with. Like I have no problem going to American Furniture Warehouse with Allie Reagan's mom, and Allie's at home, like that, you know, like that is how I live my life. And so when they're like, yeah, we love you, I'm like, oh, okay. Like, phew. So funny.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Now, another part of your life, I mean, you're such a multifaceted individual. There's just so many different things about Jenna that everyone knows, but, you know, it's awesome to hear your perspective on them. So, this next thing is, what made you enter the army and go through that process?
Yeah, you know, I moved out to the training center in 2012, knew about the Army World Class Athlete Program, knew like Iris Smith and all these guys, and I had met, you know, one of the coaches, Bruce Robinson, like when I was hanging out with Nate Angle. So I knew of the program. I could see that I was very comfortable with these guys, and that it was very family oriented, and they were just good people who had your back. Like I wasn't in the Army. I was a teenager, you know, I was 20 years old when I met them. And, you know, they took me into their barbecues and let me hang out. And so I saw the dynamic, and I really liked that. I liked what they had to offer as opposed to being at the training center, because they had my back through and through, whether I was number 1 or number 10, they had my back. And I like a support system like that. But it also comes with raising your right hand and joining the Army and all that like intimidation. And so I sat, you know, I had to think about it for a long time. I kept telling them, no, you're crazy. I'm not going to join. Like, I love you guys. I'll come to the barbecues, but I'm not joining. I'm not wearing the uniform. And then there came a point in my career where I was just like plateaued. I didn't feel like I had the support, and I needed a drastic change. And after telling them no for so long, I finally just showed up and was like, all right, where do I join? And they're like, what? And I was like, I'm just going to do it. And I didn't give it any, much thought after that. I told my parents. My mom flew out to Colorado just to like hang out for the week. And then she met with like, I want to say he was like a master sergeant at the time, like way higher ranking. My mom is just roasting this man, like trying to figure out like what's going to happen to baby girl. Like, is Jenna going to go to war? Like, what does this mean? And she's asking all the questions I'm probably too embarrassed to ask at 22 years old. And, we felt comfortable with how it worked, how WCAP worked in the unit. And after Olympic trials in 2016, I was off on my way to basic training in Fort Jackson. So yeah, it was a good decision.
That's rough. I mean, like I said, meeting your mom, I can see her completely asking all of these questions and, being so upfront and having, zero reservations about asking them, which is funny because you sitting back and letting her kind of take the lead, I would see it probably kind of the opposite way where you'd be like, all right, what's going to happen? Where am I going? You're just like, listen, I'm going to enter. I'm coming. Like, where do I go? Right. But now you've recently graduated, right? It was a couple months ago, right? You recently graduated. And what was the process like? How do you feel now that you've graduated?
So recently I graduated what's called advanced leadership course. It's to get promoted to staff sergeant. So it's funny to see like where I started, a nervous Nelly. I felt like I kind of lost my footing a little bit in life. You get like told to be a certain way, certain relationships really factor in, surround yourself with good people as opposed to maybe, the not right environment. So I had a really big like dent on my confidence at, 20, 21 years old. And then I joined the Army, and that started to really build my confidence, even at that age, So I, started to build my confidence. And it's funny, like now graduating ALC, I went through BLC and, my, basic course and all that kind of stuff. To see the leader I am now, it's like funny to me that like I would ever be like a nervous Nelly type person, because now I'm just like, you get experience in these ways and you just grow in confidence. Like I think a lot of the stuff that you do on the mat translates to being a soldier and vice versa for me. And so just it's really cool to see the growth as a leader in the military as well as on the mat. And so it plays a huge part in who I am, and especially with my wrestling career, like for me, like being a soldier is a big part of my life. And I know that like whether I wrestle, whether I don't, if I continue on in the Army, like I feel like I'm in the right place, to mentor soldiers and to build relationships that way. And so I feel in a very good place. And I think that's what makes wrestling so much fun for me. And just, I enjoy what I do, because when you see the real worlds of life, right, you see like there's more to the 6-minute match. Like this is not the end of the world. Like there are other things. And I think that perspective really helps me to enjoy the moment, because you never know if that moment's going to come again.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And you talked about your career. So let's get back to wrestling a little bit. You said you come back, you make the world team 2021, and you win a bronze medal. What's that feeling like after the roller coaster of emotions that you had that previous year? Or at least, I mean, actually it was, a couple months prior, because the Olympics and the World Championships were in the same year. So what's that like when you accomplish, you make it on the podium and win that bronze medal after like such, like I said, a roller coaster of a time?
Yeah. I mean, kind of like unreal, you just kind of like, I don't even think I took it all in, even in the moment, like now reflecting months or a year later almost, of just like, wow, how did I do that? Where was my mind at? Like, it was an exhausting time period, and it's crazy to think it all happened in months. In the moment, like I remember like walking out and hearing the music, like getting on the podium, it's just like, I remember just like quietly crying, because I was like, holy shit, like we're here, like we did it. This has been like the worst year of my life. Like it's kind of ironic that how could the worst year of my life include the best moments? And it also felt rotten though, because like I didn't get to share it with the one person that like push me to do it. You know,
Mhm.
that's like, that still bothers me. But, you know, like knowing that like my mother was there in spirit and all that kind of stuff, like it definitely kept pushing me. And I have all these factors, like you'll never see me quit or, you know, give up, because there's just so much pushing. There's a lot of people that push me to where I'm at, you know, like there's a lot of things behind the scenes, and I just have like, I'm thankful to such a support system, because it's not easy to do alone. And, you know, I'm really thankful to them. I remember when I got home, I just like was so thankful to like my coaching staff, and especially to like my coach, like Bruce Robinson, and just like coach, you know, Hodge, and like obviously my wife. To me, it just felt like this is a really nice moment for me, but like these people got me here because they put, you know, like so much work and so much like support, like mentally, because man, to get me to that point, like that was it, you know, like you know, Olympic trials, like I didn't even know if I was going to show up, you know. It's like, and you go from that to like then going out there and like performing and wrestling again and all these matches, and then doing so well, and then having like people kind of like wonder if that was a fluke, almost getting ready for world team trials, you know, like, well, she beat Helen, but like, can she do it again? Can she beat Jakara, the world champion? You know, like there was a lot of like chatter and like doubts, and like there was no way I was going to lose again. There'd been so much loss in those 6 months that I was like, I can't believe anybody would ever bet against me, because there's no way in hell. Nobody wants it as much as I want. I want it, and I wanted it in those moments. And so just kind of like funny to see like how fueled like I was, and like how intense it was for me. And to look back on it now, I'm like, wow, like that was a difficult time in my life. I kind of still can't believe like I kept showing up like that.
Mhm. Speaking of showing up, you lose at the World Championships, but you were able to come back and wrestle for bronze. How do you pull yourself back up to wrestle that bronze medal match?
Oh my God, that was so like, I think it's like, you know, beating Jakara, there was the expectation that Jenna should win worlds. She'd just be the world champion. I had that expectation as well. I knew my first match was going to be a difficult one because Hemmer has a unique style, but I didn't really, you know, didn't overestimate or underestimate. And then I lose horribly. Like my head's not even in this match, you know, and a lot of it, like I was off kilter. Like I gave an interview for like a documentary and talked heavily about my mom and the traumatic events, which I think really triggered me. Like, I think you have to know these things about yourself, like when to give interviews and when not to. I think it's important,
Yeah.
you know? And I think that was a mistake on my part that I've learned, but I did it. And then I went and I stepped out, and my wife is talking to my like one of my good friends on my teams, and they're like texting because they obviously COVID, they couldn't be at the world championships, and they're like, she doesn't look like Jenna. Like they can tell immediately, and I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm fine, I'm fine. I go out there, and then I'm like losing, and then all of a sudden I'll snap into it, and then I can score points, and then you can see it, like it's like you can see I'm not even there. So I get tech balled, and I'm thinking like I just let myself down, my mom down again, like my whole team, like I am just feeling the weight of the world. Like how could this happen? Like how could I have beat the best girls actually in the world and then go to world championships and not win? So I'm crushed, and I'm like thinking she's not going to pull me through. I'm like, I'm screwed. I'm done. Like I can't believe this happened again. And then my coaches, the best thing that they could do for me, they literally are just like, we love you. Like we, you know, like they still love me. Like my WCAP coaches did not care. Like, of course they care because they put the work in too, but they're like, you're going to be all right. And that's the best thing they could do, is not make a big deal and like, you know, talking down to me. Hemmer
Mhm.
goes on to pull off comeback matches of herself and
Yeah.
tournament by the miracle. And then she comes up to me and goes, you have to win now. My opponent that just beat me goes, you have to win now. You have to get on the podium. So like, that's touching. Like, and, like, like my opponent is literally telling me this, like, you have to do this for your mom. And so as soon as that happens, like, as soon as she pulls me back in, like, I'm in this, I got to get back to being me and not trying to think too much, Jenna is the best Jenna when she just goes out there to fucking like beat some ass and just have fun. So the next morning I wake up and it's like a whole different Jenna. Like I wake up and I'm like composed, I'm relaxed. And then I have an email, and this is significant because like all this time I was like, you know, I would get these emails or like ads for like this like a airplane company. I don't even know. I randomly started getting them after my mom died. It would be like Sam at Airwatch, whatever. Then the morning of the second day of World Championships, I get an email, Rosie, which is my mom's name, Rosie at Airwatch, and then the subject of it is last chance, all caps. So I'm like, oh my God, like this is like literally time. Like, and I'm like, this is my last chance to get a medal. Literally, this is the last day. So I wake up and I'm like telling my coaches, like, I got my sign, like I'm good. Like this is it. Like I know I'm gonna do it. And then my coaches are like, just because normally I play this game as my warm up. I do like toe touch game. That's how I train. They're like, just do your normal warm up. Why would you do something like that somebody else is telling you to do? So okay, I do my normal warm up. I play my game. And then I go out there and I'm wrestling like Jenna, you know, and then everything is just falling to place. Like I feel like myself. And then I just knew like I wasn't going to go home without a bronze medal. You know, it was like written in the stars, and it was meant to be for me to take the longer road to get third, but it was way more worthwhile. But it's like, it's funny how you kind of have to go through those things. But yeah, second day I was ready to rock and roll.
Yeah. And that's great. And now you move to this year, and this year things don't really turn out how you wanted them at all. And, you know, me being a fan of you and being as close as we are, you know, we talk all the time, you know, there's never any cameras or microphones when we're talking, but, you know, I'm watching the match and I love you as well as Jakara. I still owe Jakara wings for winning the world championships. That's a bet that I haven't paid up on, but you end up, you know, getting injured. What happens and how are you feeling now?
Yeah, it pisses me off, honestly. Like, there's no good way to feel about that. I won the first match. I was winning the second. Like, it's unfortunate. I feel like I was the better wrestler. I feel like I should be at World Championships. I'll be honest, like it's bitter to me. But like life just throws you hands, you know. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, it wasn't meant for me to be the world team member this year. What is the bigger picture? You know, I have to think about that and heal up on some injuries. And it was a fluke thing. You know, you don't plan to leave a freaking wrestling tournament in a stretcher. I hated every second of that. On the stretcher, like I'm demanding a third match because I think it's ludicrous. Like, you know, meanwhile, I don't have like any function in the left side of my body. Like it's, you know, it's just unfortunate. But it is what it is. I always, you know, like I come back so much stronger. Like, me and adversity, like we're so tight, you know, like, so I worry for the people at next year's trials because like, I feel bad for them because I come back so much better.
Yeah.
You know, and you just got to take it that way. Like, hats off to Jakara, like best of luck at World Championships. I have a great time wrestling her. Like, I like the battles. It's fun. But I like, you know, I'm a little bit bitter, but like, you got to see the big picture. And I feel very confident in my game plan and with what I'm going through and like my protocols and getting myself back to be a better version of myself. So, you know, I'm excited for that, staying sharp and still working out. And just, you know, like just taking it day by day you know, it's unfortunate, but just got to keep rolling with it.
Yeah. So are you back to 100% or are you still recovering?
Yeah, still recovering. Still recovering.
Yeah.
I don't know when exactly my return to competitions will be. I think like in my brain, I would like to show up to either the World Cup or the World Ranking events in February or World Cup. So kind of shooting for that. But, you know, luckily for me, like I have very good protocol off the mat and it's very, you know, like it's worked very well for me so far. And so I trusting into my support system is important. So sticking that out. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Jenna, we're getting close to the end, and you know, as I always do, I always talk with people about what they want the next generation to know, whether it's something that they learned, or it's something that you tell yourself on a daily basis, or something that somebody has told you? So what sort of advice would you like to pass on to this next generation of female wrestlers, of female athletes, of student athletes looking to do great things? What's a Jenna piece of wisdom?
Gosh, that's a good one. A lot of me is thinking in my head what this question is like, continue to like figure out who you are as a person, because I think that ties into your success on every level of life. I think, and that doesn't mean like, oh, like I figured out, like who I am with my relationship and, whatever. Like everyone's story is going to be different, but
Mm-hmm.
don't feel like you have to be a certain version of yourself because what the wrestling world thinks, or wrestlers should be this, like that. Wrestlers are everyone, athletes are everyone. We're so multifaceted. So don't let the world kind of make you feel like you should be a certain way. And I think that will help your journey. But also, like, you have to believe in yourself in everything. Like, to me, that's the most important thing. Like, it fuels you, it motivates you. Like, you have to believe in you before anyone else does. I'll leave you with this story. I was told in the first world team I ever made by one of the coaches, who was the world team coach, 2014, right? I'm 21. They told me, Jenna, you will never medal on purpose. The only way you'll win is by accident. I was told that for real. So in 2021, when I got my medal, I was like, oh, like, I thought back to that memory, because that was a pivotal moment in my life. Getting told that, like, I let somebody make me feel insecure, doubted myself. I didn't have belief because some coach from nowhere told me I would only score by accident. Bullshit. Like, you got to find a way in the world. And I let that really bother me for a long time, like having that doubt. And now looking back on, like, really building my character and who I am, everything tied into, like, the puzzle pieces just kept adding, and brick by brick, right? And just like believing in myself. Like, I think that's so important, because it's going to help you in all aspects. And just, like, enjoying the journey, because like life goes so fast. I remember being 20 and 21, 19, 20, all those years with my teammates, like with Allie and Sarah. And now we're like Sarah and I, oldest girls on the team. We're 29. Like, it goes by. So I would for sure say to enjoy all the moments, enjoy the travel, enjoy the crummy itineraries that gets booked, and you get a long layover in some godforsaken country, and you and Sarah are sharing a twin bed, because when you're 29, you'll laugh about it.
Yeah, the international trips, that is yeah, those stories, that's where you form really good bonds on those international trips.
You really do.
Um I know I said that was the last question, but did you go back and like send that coach like a picture of your medal or anything that said that?
My God. I really wish I did, because I think the irony was they like congratulated me. I don't think I responded, because I was like, I'm not even gonna bother with this. But like, I think that's an important lesson, because like I wasn't the only, like, Erin Golston, like, she also heard this being said to me, and we were both like, oh my God, like, but people are going to have opinions about you, and it's like up to you to believe them or not. Who are you going to believe? The person who said that, or yourself? And I think that is like such an important lesson. And I wish I would have kind of brushed that off a bit more when I was 21. But at 21, you tend to listen to those things a little bit more. And, like at 29, like, I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be 35 in October. You listen to those people less and less, trust me. So,
Yeah.
but Jenna, this has been awesome. I'm so glad that we had a chance to catch up.
Yeah.
Like I said, obviously as a fan of yours and a friend of yours, I was worried about you when you got injured, and I was happy to be getting text messages from the man Cliff Fretwell letting us know that you were doing okay that night. I think we were all up pretty late. It was
Oh
a
my.
weekend, so we were all up. But I was getting text messages from Cliff, So shout out to Cliff. I think I'm actually wearing a compound shirt as I do most days because the Fretwells are, fam. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm glad that you would take some time out. You said you had a busy day. But yeah, thanks, Jenna. As always, much love to you and much love to Alex. And I appreciate you both. But thanks for catching up. You got anything else before I end the recording?
No, thank you very much. This was fun.